it's Melissa Carter. I'm the writer and publisher at Wanging Dude Publishing. Thank you so much for being a part of the channel. If you're new to the channel, I'm an Atlanta media personality who is writing my own memoir. And so I'm publishing it myself. I began Wanging Dude Publishing. It's a independent publishing house that publishes my work. And I'm going to have my first book out in the spring of 2025. And so I have videos on this channel that share the process and everything that I'm doing and going through and thinking about and having to organize. And one of those things is galleys. Now, if you've never been in media or in the bookstore setting, you may not know what a galley is. So basically, when you write a book, you write it on your word processor or, on your notepad, and then you send it to an editor. You should use an editor, which I have done. The editor then goes through it, makes the changes, comes back to you. You kind of go over those changes, and you and the editor go back and forth until you have a product that you're satisfied with. Well, then you go to a book designer, and the book designer is the one that takes that file and formats it to where it will print correctly in the book. And so from your 8x10 sheet of paper into whatever size your book is, and the margins and the font and the spacing, that's what a book designer does. The chapter headings, what the numbers look like at the beginning of the chapters, any kind of artwork you want in there, any kind of text you want set apart as a quote or in a bracket in a box, that's the book designer. And then once the book designer is done with that piece, then if you are printing this, then you go to a book publisher who is actually going to publish the book, physically print the book. I should say printer instead of publisher, a printer, a book printer. And then they print it. Now, initially, they print what's called a galley. And so the idea is that, okay, I need to get the book reviewed if you want to get the book reviewed. And if you picked up a book in a bookstore and you've seen all the quotes from, Newsweek and, Time Magazine and all, they sent a galley to these individuals for review before they publish the actual finished book. Now, what makes a galley different? So I've brought a book in, a Paper Orchestra by Michael Jamin. And if I keep it close to me, then it won't blur. But I don't know him. He's a television writer who has written a book over the pandemic. He self-published his book. And it's a story about his background and how he got into writing for television. A really interesting a collection of stories. But his is a good example because his is about the size that my book is going to be. And I wanted to use this as an example. So when you get a book, you see how this is just perfectly, all the pages are cut perfectly. It's smooth, right? You put your finger over it, smooth. Well, in a galley, because it's kind of like a rough print of the book, this edge may be choppy. And the reason I mentioned earlier media and bookstore, that sometimes bookstores and media get the galleys ahead of the publication of the book. And so I have seen plenty of galleys where, the print, the quality may not, the paper, it may not be exactly as it's going to be in the final product, but it's something to get out. It gives you an idea of what the book's going to look like. You forgive the fact that the edges are, not right, and you forgive some of the typos in it. So the other reason you get a galley too is for the author to be able to go through it and make sure that even though, you had the editing, you went back and forth. I memean, sometimes you go blind looking at this because you've looked at it so much that you may skip a mistype or a space that's off, double space between words instead of single space. So a galley is a good way for the author to go through the book and make sure and send it to their friends and say, okay, well, you just read this and make sure there's no, nothing funky in here. And that way with the galley, you can, before you do the final printing, you can make changes if you need to. Okay, hopefully that explained a quick process through writing to get it to publishing. Publishing houses, publishers usually handle all this. They have departments that handle all of this. So, if you are a seasoned professional writer who has a publisher, you don't have to worry about all these different elements to publishing. But if you're going to self-publish and you want to do it in a professional manner, you've got to think about all these different elements of publishing. Now, I'm in charge of sending the galleys out because I'm publishing my own book. So something else that you have to think about is how you're going to ship it out and the cost of shipping it out. Okay. So that's something else. Now, I have used a certain company. Now, they don't know I'm mentioning them. I have a link below. You can use any company, but my son goes to a school that has active parent association, and I happened to get a recommendation from one of them on shipping something for the school's event called Sticker Mule. And what Sticker Mule does is they can do custom stickers, they can do packaging, they have different products in which you can custom print things. And so for me, instead of just going, you can go to an office supply store and get plain envelopes, it's fine. But I wanted bubble envelopes that had my logo on it so that when it arrived to the people who agree to review it, then they will see it's there and it won't get lost. I mentioned that because in all the books, previous videos on this channel, I have books that I recommend, books that have helped me through the process that give me kind of like a step-by-step on how to do all this. But they say, look, don't just send this out to people without them understanding that you're sending this out. You got to make sure that you are sending it out to people who are expecting the book, because then you're wasting your money. You printed a book and you bought the envelope and you paid for the postage and you send it out. Now, again, Sticker Mule, I used, again, not a sponsor. I'm not Sticker Mule. It doesn't know I'm saying this. But I used them because I thought the quality of the logo, because I like to personalize it, I thought was well done on the bubble envelope. Like I said, Michael's book is about the size of my book. So this is like a 7.5 by 10.5 envelope that I purchased. And when I get the printing done, then I will, on my own, stuff those envelopes, put the labels on. The process, we'll talk about in another video. Before I get to that point, is I have to reach out to these people. But that's the reason you have to give yourself time. I like to work at not a panic pace. Now, I do know people in my life that love to work in a crisis and they love to work last minute. I'm not one of those people. And so I need to think about these things ahead of time, kind of wrap my mind around it, and then know what I need to do next. Where am I in the process of the recording of this? I've heard back from the editor. I'm going through the book again with her changes and her questions and trying to smooth out the content so that it is more palatable to you, where, the storyline is consistent, it's not confusing. And that's why I use an editor, because she was able to tell me, hey, I don't understand this. There was a whole section that I just deleted yesterday because the editor's like, I like it, I understand it, but it doesn't fit anywhere. Like, she's like, I don't know where to put this. And she's like, I recommend you just ditching it for good. So there was part of the content that I let go of because she let me know that, look, you're going to have people kind of be stunted in their energy of reading it, try to figure out, well, okay, this is kind of shows up out of nowhere. So I had another video talking about how to write, how to get everything on the page. The editing process is where you not only smooth out the rough edges, but you also take out the content that's not necessary. So again, there's a lot to go over. And so that's why I try, as I'm going through it, to share this with you. But I ordered the envelopes. I'm glad I thought about this before I ended the video. One of the other things, and I highly recommend you look at some of the older videos having to do with the books that I recommend, because if you're somebody that's just joining the channel and thinking, hey, I want to write my own book, I want to try this out, you can. Just be organized and just have the information and think about it ahead of time so that you have a plan in place when you're doing it. But I also got, and this is just from Amazon, one of the recommendations is that you get a stamp. So once I get the Galleys, then I have to stamp on the side of the book, and it says review copy, not for resale. And so if you've ever been in the media or in bookstores and seen the Galleys, somewhere on that book is printed because it's a galley. It's got the mistakes in it. It's not the final product. So you can't sell it because it's not what the author is intending for the audience to see. So that's what I'm in the process of doing. At the same time, I'm trying to get back to the editor. I've got the book publisher, or book designer rather, ready to take the final product and putting it into a format Once she's done with that, then I'm ready to go to the printer and say, let's get the galleys out. One of the other things too, if you are an author that is not going to print, this doesn't matter to you. If you're not going to have a physical copy, you don't need this, you don't need the stamp, you don't need the envelope. If you're just doing an ebook, you still need the editor, I believe. You still need the book designer. Because the book designer can fit whatever format that you are going to do your ebook on. But you need these things. And so if you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. I'm happy to answer questions in another video. This is an experiment. I'll also say this is my first long form book. And it's an experiment. And I am challenging myself to get this done. And I got the manuscript done. And I'm getting the second draft done. And so you can do it. And it's actually kind of fun. It's tedious. But it's fun because my future self will thank me now for actually going through the process. So you can subscribe to the channel to see all these videos. You can also support the channel below. Any support you give, as seen in the description, goes to the publishing of this book. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Facing inward, seeing clear. All her strength, it brought her here.